Ben Shapiro sat down with a Christian creator, and in a rare form, he was asked why he didn't want the Christian to be a Jew and how this all works from the Jewish paradigm. So if you guys aren't familiar with Matt from Pints with Aquinas, probably right now my favorite Catholic creator. I'm not gonna hold, but Schrinhorn is up there, Lila Rose is up there, but man, Pints with Aquinas, great aesthetic, great vibe, super smart, very articulate in terms of his points of views. And they cover a lot in this conversation, generally about God, theisms, those sort of things. And so he kind of talks about how like the foundation is theism, and then second floor is Christianity, and then the third floor from Matt is his Catholic faith and why he believes the Catholic faith is true.
Gotcha. Ben
is so friendly that Matt actually presses him on why he's not pressing him to become a Jew. This is great. Play the video.
Why don't you want me to be a Jew, or do you?
I don't care.
Yeah, so why?
Why? Because
I want you to be Catholic, obviously.
Right, no, and by the way, I appreciate.
I don't care.
I don't care. Isn't that a good question? Why don't you want me to be a Jew? Because I clearly want you to be Catholic.
Yep.
Want you to be Christian. All right. And by the way, Matt does not back down from talking about his Christian faith. He talks about it a whole lot in this conversation.
Really?
Oh yeah.
Wow.
Oh yeah. Because he talks about like, I believe it's true. Like, we don't just believe because it's pragmatic. We actually believe that Christianity is true. That is why we hold to it, right? And not true in I need to rationally make sense of everything, but true in a intrinsically true, pragmatically true, living out truth, right? And so go ahead and play this.
Yeah.
Like, this is what I've always said to my Catholic friends, my Protestant friends.
Yeah.
As long as you're coming at me with a book and not a sword, that's great.
And they're not being annoying and
exactly.
berating you or something like that.
But I mean, even if you want to be annoying about it, that's fine. Like, you care enough about my soul that you want me to be saved. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
It's much appreciated. And we'll find out in the overtime period.
As long as you're coming at me with a book and not a sword, what is he alluding to? Well, Catholics, Eastern Orthodox, and Protestants have not been very nice to Jewish people throughout the ages. That is just an uncomfortable history that we've all have to deal with, right? From early on to the Spanish Inquisition to Martin Luther, everything in between. We haven't treated them very well. So that line, as long as you're coming at me with a sword, a book and not a sword, that's where that's coming from. And a lot of the hostility, not to say that like any religious persecution of any kind is justified, but a lot of the hostility from some Jews towards Christians is because of the history and because of how they were treated at the hands of the church.
Gotcha.
So Ben says, I don't care. And then he even goes on to say, even if you're being annoying, hey, if you really believe that this is what I need to believe to be saved, to get into heaven, I'm thankful for that. And we'll find out in overtime. He says in overtime when everything is done.
That's crazy.
Wrong. But
why don't you? Because we talked about earlier about the only reason you should believe something is because it's true.
Right.
You presumably believe I believe falsehoods and you believe true things. So why shouldn't you encourage me to abandon some of my beliefs and adopt some of yours?
Right. So doctrinally, what Judaism believes is that the commandments of Israel were only given to Israel.
I never knew this. Wow. Shout out to all you guys that believe you got to keep the all these other laws and all these other 613 commandments. Ben Shapiro, who's a Reformed Orthodox Jew, I believe that's how you would categorize himself, Reformed Orthodox, believes that the laws aren't meant to be held by people that aren't Jewish. That is very, very interesting.
Meaning that the 7 Noahide commandments that I referred to earlier, those are incumbent on all of humanity because they're given to Noah, right before the Jews actually arise as an independent family and people. And so those apply to everyone. So if you're not a member of the Judaic tribe, then those rules don't apply to you. So the 613 commandments that apply to me are boiled down to 7 for you. And so
the 613 commandments that Jews are held to, non-Jews are not held to. Never knew this. This is very interesting. Okay. So, what does that say to all the folks who want to keep the old laws and all that kind of stuff? Well, from a Jewish perspective, they don't believe that those things apply to non-Jews. Very interesting.
What that means is that if you want to join in to do those commandments, like, that's not required of you. Like, sure, you welcome if you want, but certainly Judaism doesn't feel the necessity to force
to evangelize and to bring people
because
into
Judaism doesn't actually suggest being chosen doesn't mean being superior. Right? I think this is one of the great misnomers of sort of history, is that when the Jews say that they're a chosen people, what they mean is that they're better than everyone else. And it's like, no, in the same way that if I choose my oldest child to take out the trash, that doesn't mean that my oldest child is better. It means I need my oldest child to take out the trash. Like, that's not the same thing.
Okay.
And so the sort of idea that Jews are, in their own minds, superior to everybody else because it is incumbent on them to do that, that's obviously not how Jews think, especially because there are a bunch of commandments that are incumbent on men in Judaism that are not incumbent on women in Judaism. Does Judaism then believe that women are of lesser value than men? I mean,
but apart from little laws, there must be like metaphysical things that you hold as true that you would like me to believe. Or at least you would like me. I don't mean to be confrontational, but you would clearly would want Christians to realize that Christ was not the Messiah. That he didn't. Maybe you don't want that, or maybe it doesn't bother you. You don't care one way or the other.
Right. So
shout out to Matt. Matt self-admittedly doesn't like to debate. He says that in this conversation, and then leans into, like, we were talking about truth claims.
Yeah, he's like, what's true?
What's true? And you don't want Jesus to be the Messiah. You don't believe Jesus to be the Messiah, so why would you want me to believe that? Now, I don't know if it's at this point, but Ben makes a shocking revelation that is actually in contradiction with my online acquaintance, Rudy Rockman, a.k.a. Rudy Israel. When Rudy Rockman sat down with who's the gentleman that they had the conversation with? I'm forgetting. He has a pretty big YouTube channel. He talks to Jews for Jesus, talks to Jews in Israel. When him and they talk about there was a specific claim made against Christians that Rudy then said to me privately, and we were kind of having dialogue about this. And I love the work that Rudy does in terms of the work with trying to bring reconciliation to the land and all that good stuff, and the Palestinians and finding solutions. And he does a lot of those. I love that stuff. But when it comes to Christians, I was like, man, I don't know if you quite get what you're saying. And so let's see if this is here, or we might have to find a timestamp. But it's really good. Listen up.
So the way,
like when I look at Mormons, I'm like, look, I love you, and this isn't a criticism on you directly, but Joseph Smith was not a prophet. My Muslim friend, I love you, but like Muhammad was a liar or a lunatic. Maybe he was possessed, but he wasn't a prophet.
Right. So
my man Matt's standing 10 toes down.
He's like, you're all catching strays. Every single one of you.
Everyone's catching a stray.
Talking to a Jew right now, but everyone's getting it.
Everyone's getting it.
I have to say that in love, and so I would wonder, and maybe it's just that you have a public platform, and so you don't want to get into that to offend people unnecessarily.
It really isn't that. I mean, the Jewish doctrine is that as long as you believe in God, as long as the actual seven commandments to non-Jews are believe in God, no eating the flesh of living animals, actually one of them. You have to establish courts of law, no murder, no sexual sins, no idolatry, and I believe no stealing. It's like seven of the 10, right?
Yeah.
Like we don't actually believe that non-Jews are even bound by the 10 commandments, right? They're bound by the 7 commandments in Judaism.
Hey.
So it like boils even further down. So how you believe in God is of little consequence to me, so long as you do believe in the monotheistic God.
What if I believe in a God that lives on top of a mountain and whose name is Jeffrey?
So if he doesn't,
and I'd say that's God.
If he doesn't fulfill the fundamental properties of God, then that doesn't count.
Which would be what?
So the fundamental properties of God would be that he's in charge of the universe, creator of the universe, master of the divine law, all-powerful, all-knowing, all-loving would probably be in that category. There's debate in sort of Jewish circles as to whether you have to believe that God gave the commandments at Sinai, whether that's a debate between a couple of major rabbis, Maimonides included, as to whether if you discover those 7 laws on your own, but you don't believe that they were given at Sinai, does that count? Right? So there is some doctrinal debate there, but in general, the basic idea that there is only one path to God in the same way that there is in Christianity,
I see.
That doesn't exist in the same way.
What about like a Mormon who believed that God was once a man like we are? Like, would you go, okay, I'm not saying you've given much thought about this, but would that be a place where you'd be like, no, I need to evangelize you, or not that word, but I need you to come to believe in God differently than you currently do?
So the answer to me is, I'm going to go with the I don't know answer. like pretty much everything.
You both get 3.
There's like major debate on all of these things. And there's a debate for a long time in Judaism over whether, say, Trinitarianism is monotheism or if it's not monotheism.
Now, this was Rudy Rockman's claim against Christians, that because we follow Jesus, we're all idol worshipers.
That's what it was.
And I was like, bro, I promise you the incarnation is not the same as idol worship.
Wow.
And if we're going to talk about idol worship, or we're going to talk about praying to anyone besides Yahweh, or they would say Hashem, the Muslims reference Muhammad in their prayer. And there's parts in their daily prayer that they pray 5 times a day where they're talking to Muhammad. So they're technically doing the same thing, but you're soft on Muslims.
But you don't call them Muslims.
You don't call them Muslims for idol worship, but you do. So Ben Shapiro says here that there's debate, and not everyone believes that the Trinity, the triune God, is idolatry, or they still, many hold to that. Our view of the triune God still falls within the Jewish definition of monotheism. So take that, Rudy Rockman. No, I'm just playing. Rudy, if you're watching this, I love you, bro. Let me pull this back one more time. Listen closely.
I don't know answer. like pretty much everything.
Both get 3.
There's like major debate on all of these things. And there's a debate for a long time in Judaism over whether, say, Trinitarianism is monotheism or if it's not monotheism. Right? Like that was a serious debate in Judaism. It's come down on the side of it's monotheism.
Okay.
It's come down on the side that Trinitarianism is monotheism.
Wow.
That means that the Jews according to Ben Shapiro and in whatever circles he flows in, got it more right than many people who are like Aryans and we don't believe Jesus is eternal because then, like this is crazy stuff.
Yeah, that's insane. So
they got it more right than the Jehovah's Witnesses.
but is it weird that their view is that like as long as you believe in a monotheistic God that kind of covers the bases of what we want God to be, then that is like even if your God it maybe has a different form that you believe or has a different name or whatever. Like it's kind of like syncretism, is it not?
Yeah, I mean it's definitely syncretism,
Universal
but
spirituality.
Yeah, it's like they wouldn't call it spirituality, but it's like live and let live. You believe what you believe, and as long as you believe in one God, then cool. We're cool with that.
Wow.
You know what I mean?
Crazy.
Even though they don't see Jesus as a prophet, and they definitely don't see Muhammad as a prophet. That's what he's basically getting at.
So I wouldn't know the answer as far as Mormon doctrine specifically. Let's put it this way: if you're talking about like paganism, Judaism would have a problem with paganism. So let's say that you believed that there were 100 gods and they all ruled over different aspects of humanity. Then Judaism would say that does not fulfill the seven.
And if you were in dialogue with somebody like this, would you feel obligated to try to help divest them of that error so that they could be saved?
Sure. I mean, so then I would feel obligated to actually.
So New Age spirituality, it sounds like Eastern religion.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, Ben has to do our version of evangelism, I guess. I don't know how you would categorize that.
In the same way that
believe
if somebody believed that adultery was morally acceptable, I would feel the obligation to say, well, no, adultery is not morally acceptable, and it's better for you to not believe that.
Okay.
So Judaism is very weird that way, and historically speaking, it's kind of interesting to see whether that is an outgrowth of the direction of Jewish history or that was inherent to the religion, right? Because obviously when Joshua comes into the land, mass conversion takes place, right? When in the pre-Christian era, the Judaism was one of the fastest growing religions in the Roman Empire. A huge percentage of Alexandria was Jewish. There were huge Jewish communities in Egypt, and so it was an actual more proselytizing religion. And so one of the questions of Jewish history is sort of
how did that
was the Jewish move away from proselytization historically driven or ideologically driven, or is it sort of ideological justification of how history had gone?
Yeah, and it sounds like I don't want to assume, but it sounds like Ben's also alluding that they did shift on the view that Christians are idol worshipers because we worship Jesus. It sounds like they did shift away. It was a debate within, and it sounds like what he's saying in his circles, most Jews fall on Jesus. Following Jesus, believing in a triune God is not idol worship. It is monotheism.
Well, I would.
That's how I heard it. Maybe if he was pressed and said, so, hey, my friend Rudy Rockman said, you think we worship idols. Is that true? Yes or no?
Yeah.
Versus saying, well, no, the triune God still falls within a monotheism. You know what I mean?
I guess the question is like, does a triune God cover the incarnation of God?
It would have to.
Yeah, that's true. Because like, why
would you have a triune God if there's no incarnation?
Why else would they be talking about the Trinity if they weren't talking about in the context of the Christian faith?
Right.
There's no other person making the case for the Trinity except for Christians.
Absolutely.
Interesting. Wow. Okay,
Interesting,
cool.
right?
Yeah.
Pretty cool.
Hey, this is a segment from our daily after party stream. Consider partnering with us online for as little as $5 a month to get access to these daily after party streams completely unedited. You'll also get access to our podcast as they are streamed live into the community before anyone else gets to see them, get to interact with our guests, get access to our private Discord server, and a discount code for our store. Ultimately, that will help towards helping us continue contextualizing the gospel using media and podcast here on YouTube. All right, I'll see you over there. Peace.